So after our last video that we did wiring up a car, we got a lot of responses that said, hey, how do I unpin a connector? So today we're gonna unpin a lot of connectors. So to get this job done and get it done right, we need the right set of tools. I've gone online and I've got a big selection of different picks, pin removal tools, cutters, all different styles for all different range of connectors, because you will get caught out with this one day if you are wiring an entire car or just an engine. A lot of brands use a lot of similar connectors on their engines for sensors because a lot of the sensors are common across different brands. So you will find that a lot of connectors are the same on different brands of cars and engines, and some are just completely random and one-off. I've got a range of different picks and removal tools here from the net. Some of them are designed to do all sorts of weird jobs. Some of them are designed for exactly this sort of task. This pick is very, very handy. This is probably my go-to for a lot of the different Deutch style connectors, just like this one. This will be probably the best tool for this style of connector. So let's attack this one first, and I'll show you how quick and easy it is to deepin this. You'll see why this is one of the most popular connectors in automotive at the moment. So in the middle, we can see we've got a locking connector. This locking connector, or cheese sometimes, or wedge, it's got a whole different name, a bunch of names depending on where you live, but that's what we need to remove first. So we can use a pair of side cutters with flush, or you can just grab whatever you've got around. I often find the smaller version of these works really well, but any ones with ridges in them are very handy because they seem to grip on the connector. Ooh. And that's how easy that locking tab comes out. So once we've got that out, there is an array of little tabs inside that hold these pins in place. So we just need to flick one of those tabs out while holding it with your one hand here. It is tricky. You will get the hang of it. And once you've done one or two, it will be very, very easy. So all I've done is flicked that little tab on the inside, and it has freed up that pin. So you can see that I can remove that pin now very, very easily. So we're going to remove another one of these pins. So again, it's just as simple as flipping back one of those little tabs that holds in the pin. And I'm making this look a lot more difficult than it actually is because I'm trying to do this so that everyone can see. But basically flip a little tab inside, and then we can simply pull that pin out and it is free. You can see that there's some little ridges on the pin, and that's what that tab actually does. It locks down on top of that pin so that the pin can't pull back down past that tab. But if we flick that tab up and out of the way, we can pull that pin down. So that's exactly what we're doing. So if we need to just do another one, we just flip the little tab, and you can see how easy it is. And you can see why this is such a popular connector for automotive these days. So we've done the receptacle side of the Deutch connector. I'm going to show you how to do the plug side of the connector now. It is exactly the same process. We simply remove the locking tab, and then we flick back one of these tabs inside, and that's how easy it is to pull that pin out. Keep the little rubber water seal in place because you will need it if you're ever going to use this connector again. But very, very easy. You can do that over and over again, and then you can crimp on some new pins onto a new wire, and you can reuse this plug whenever you want. Another common question if you've never used a aftermarket ECU connector before is, how do I put a pin in, or how do I pull a pin out of one of these AMP connectors? Again, very, very, very popular across all aftermarket ECUs, and you'll see why. Waterproof connector, very, very durable. And to unlock this connector, because all 34 of these pins at the moment are locked in place, you can't physically pull this wire out with the pin attached to it. That's because it's got a great big locking membrane in there that goes down over the top of all those pins and keeps them in place. It's as simple as pushing on this big slot on the bottom with your pick, with your side cutters, with your nail. Don't look at my nails. With any shaped device that you've got that can push that out, and that you heard the click. It's very, very important that you hear that click. The two little rabbit ears pop out the top here, which say that this connector is now unlocked. And that means every single one of these wires is now unlocked. So you have to be very, very careful. Pull out the wire that you want to pull out, and only that wire. Keeping in mind, making sure that all of these wires and pins stay exactly where they are. Otherwise, you're going to have a very hard time locking this pin down. So if I push one of these wires sort of halfway in, you'll see that we're not able to ever push this down, and we're never able to lock this connector properly again, and will probably cause damage to it. Once you've ensured that all of the pins are pushed up as far as they can go and they're at the end of the connector, you can then very, very safely push down on these little tabs and hear that snap. That snap ensures that all of those pins are now locked in place. The next common connector we're going to talk about is the Metri-Pack or Packard style connector. This is often found on 1, 2, 3, and 4 bar map sensors. And if you've made the very, very bold and brave decision to go up to a 5 bar or a 6 bar or a 7 bar map sensor, you'll find that you'll have to change this connector. So sometimes you may not have that extra room that you just cut this and repin it. Sometimes you may want to go all the way up to the top, and then you can crimp on your new connector. But I'll show you how to depin one of these because it is very, very easy. To do this connector, we're going to need this pin removal tool. You won't see this used very much often on other connectors, just this one. All we do is slide this over the pin, and you'll hear it go all the way down, and you'll feel that it's in the right place because it won't be able to go any further. We'll need to take off this little locking tab at the back, which ensures that the seals and the pin stay in this connector. So we'll use the big flat one, and we'll just push off the ends. So that one's done there. And then often when you do this one will come back on. So you just got to be a little bit patient. And you can see that both of those wings are now undone. So we should be able to push that back off, which it did. It unfolded. So now that that one's off and this pin is not secured anymore, it should be a simple case of just pulling on this. And there we go. That's how easy it is to pull that pin out of this connector. There are two little wings on this pin which actually lock this connector in place. And when you push this pin removal tool over, it slides all the way down over those two little locking tabs, and that's what allows the connector to release this pin. And then you simply pull that pin out of the connector. We can crimp on a new pin on a new wire, or we can simply discard of this one because we don't need this one anymore. Next, we're going to start with this Delphi style connector. I love this connector because it is very, very easy to work with. We simply remove the locking tab on the top. There's a locking tab on the bottom. There's even a little locking tab that stops this connector from unplugging from the sensor itself. There's a lot of fail safes on this style of connector, which is awesome. So what we'll need to do is use our little pick removal tool, like this one. It's got the narrow head on it, so it can go under and flick open this connector. Sometimes I don't like to use this one for exactly this type of job, because when you're flicking it like this and it doesn't want to go, you snap the head off this very, very important tool. So sometimes you may need to go with a bigger one or the round one that is a bit stronger than this flexible and very, very useful pick. So you see how easy it is just to flick that tab up. If you're not sure if you've got it all the way up, just get rid of it altogether. Best way to see what we're actually working with. In those little tabs there, that's what's holding these three pins in place. So again, we need to remove the locking tab on the back. So that's one side up. That's the other side up, and you can see how easily that falls out now. So that just retains the wires and the seals in the back as a fail-safe. If any of these clips break from heat or vibration, which often does happen, so sometimes you will need to replace these plugs after they have a long heat cycled life. But we just pull that tab back ever so carefully and gently pull on that pin. So I'm doing that with my fingers underneath here. I'm just simply pulling that back. You can see how easy that is just to pull that pin out. I'll do another one. Got it, but I didn't pull on the pin hard enough. There we go. So you can see that that pin just falls out now. Very, very simple. Ooh. It is fiddly, like I said, so sometimes you just got to be patient and really careful. There will be swearing, there will be tantrums, but you will eventually get the job done if you just keep your cool about it. So you can see how easy that falls apart now. So we can simply replace this maybe broken connector, or maybe it's burnt, and we can just simply replace that with a nice, neat new one. So we've gone to a TI, a Honeywell style sensor, and this is a MAP or a pressure sensor connector for oil or fuel, or maybe you've got a brake pressure sensor, or maybe you've got a 5-bar MAP sensor. You'll find that all of these sensors carry this style of plug. This is a pull to seat connector. If you've watched our wiring vlog that I did earlier in the year, you'll see that in one of those videos I did a push to seat style connector like this, where it has the little tabs that you can flick out and pull this wire or pin back out. This one is a pull to seat, and it is a connector that does cause a lot of frustration in the automotive and wiring community, and you'll find that a lot of people don't like using this because they don't understand how it works, or it's bit them before and they just don't like it. So my common and best way to remove this connector, or remove the pins from this connector, because you might have put connector A or pin A where connector C or B needs to be, and you've got it wrong by accident. It happens sometimes. The best wiring tool that I find to remove these pins and fix that problem is actually this pin removal tool here. So we just simply chop that and just get it out of our lives altogether. We can start again with a new, fresh connector, because it is just so much easier. However, sourcing a brand new connector on the day just isn't viable. So I'm going to show you a quick and easy way of just getting the job done so we can get the car running. So let's just say, for example, we got our power wire and our signal wire. We got them the wrong way around in this connector. It happens. Just happens sometimes when we're reading in the dark and trying to follow that diagram, but we didn't quite see it properly. So sometimes the best job is to just cut these two wires with the power off, of course. And we just have to get the job done, where we join the green wire now up to the pink, and the pink up to the green. And we're just going to do that as neat and as tidy as possible so that we can just get the job done. So I'm going to use these little crimps. I do like these little crimps because they do make the job nice, neat, and it is actually really, really quick to just grab a set of these, rip that off, grab our Haltech crimpers, and then remember we were going to join the pink to the green and the green to the pink. So it's as simple as putting that little splice there, holding it with your other finger, making sure you don't get the green wire again and join the green wire. I've done that before just because I was in a state of panic and I wasn't thinking, but just need to make sure that those two wires are touching each other inside there. And I like to start with the letter C, that crimp right up the top there, and we're just going to get onto that crimp nice and neat and just pinch half of it, and you'll feel it go crimp right down and bite down. So that crimp actually bites down into those two wires like that, and then holds those wires in place. So So we're going to do the same on the other half. I like to just do half of it just because it's easier with your fingers in the way, holding those wires. But now we've got a really strong crimp. This is what you need to get this job done. So we can slide a bit of heat shrink over there now, or just some nice tape if you're into that sort of thing. Otherwise, heat shrink is where you're at. So this connector, you'll often see it on a lot of Haltech devices, and if you've ever had to crimp one, you'll know that it is pretty frustrating sometimes. I've done over 5,000 of these pins, I reckon, in my lifetime when I made a lot of these looms and connectors. Yeah, it sucks. It sucks. So if you get it wrong, you're not going to have a good time. You can remove a pin without cutting this whole connector off and just starting again. It can be done. You just need to know how to do it. So what we need to do is grab the tiny little pick, the one that we haven't really used yet in this video, and we're going to unlock this connector. So this connector again has a locking tab, and that locking tab holds all of those pins in place so they can't be pulled out. So we need to flick this little tab here, and you'll see that this connector now is ever so slightly different because this little locking tab has now lifted. If you're not sure if you've got it lifted all the way, you can push it on the side of the connector here and here. So I know that these pins are now unlocked, but you can see they still won't come out, and that's because each of those pins is actually held in place with a little tab, and that little tab now needs to be pushed in. And then once that tab is pushed in, the pin should freely come out of this connector. On the receptacle of this pin, this is where the male pin of the connector goes in on the tiny little face of this connector here. You'll see that there's an even tinier little slot on the bottom of this pin here. That's where we're going to have to place this little pin removal tool pick. So we'll just try and slot that down there. And once that goes in, we need to push it down even harder again. Don't push it in so hard and so far that this pin snaps off and then stabs you in the finger. Again, that's not the desired effect. Just try and push it in as far as it will go. Sometimes you may have a different style of pick to this one, and you may need to put it down on the on a grinder or maybe a little bit of sandpaper and smooth it away until it gets down and narrow enough that you can get down into this connector. Now that we've undone that little pin locking part, we should be able to pull on that, and you can see how easy that now comes out. I'll do another one just to show you how easy it actually is. Down, not stabbing ourselves, and just give it a quick pull. Ooh. Ooh, yeah, that one was a hard one. So I obviously haven't pushed this down hard enough on this. We'll go one more. Again, not stabbing ourselves. And give it a good tug. There we go. Now, when we put these pins back in the right place, we can simply place that locking tab back down, and that's all locked away. So it's not the end of the world if you get this connector wrong. It is salvageable. If you've got enough of these pins, you can then reuse them again. The next one is this BOSCH connector, or a junior timer connector. So these come in a 2, 3, 4 and a 7-way that I've seen. There may be others out there, but I haven't seen them yet. If you happen to have wired up your, let's just say EV1 style injectors that have this plug, and you wired number 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5 with number 1 being black and then number 2 red, and then you got to number 6 and Maybe you had your mind on lunchtime and you were thinking about some nachos. You got the wires the wrong way around, and that's what you ended up with, and your OCD just can't handle it. You will need a specialized tool set to remove these pins to flip them. This is an interesting pin, and a very, very special tool is required for this type of pin. You won't use this for very many other types of pins. This is very unique. So this actually goes around the pin and goes over the top of that pin, and it actually pushes two little tabs in so that we can pull that pin out of that connector. And what we need to do is actually place it over the pin and get both tabs pushed in. And as soon as we've got those two tabs pushed in, we can pull that pin out. So those two little prongs on the side there, that's what I was talking about. And then now that we've got this pin out, we can simply give it the chop. And we can strip that back and then crimp on our new pin. And that gives us as much available wires as possible to make the job nice and neat. Another tricky one that sometimes you'll find that is on these round Deutch style connectors, you've put it in number 8, but you're actually meant to put it into number 9. So what we need to do is remove this wire with its Deutch pin that is now locked in place. And we need to actually get that wire out and that pin out so that we can relocate it, which is what's so good about these Deutch connectors, is they are so flexible that you can pull one out, put it back in another spot, or reuse that wire somewhere else in another Deutch connector, but somewhere in the car. So all we're going to do is take a pin removal tool that comes with this kit when you buy it, and we just slide that down over the wire and the pin. It is very, very tricky, and again, you have to be very, very careful, patient, and gentle. And push that down, and you'll feel it just go in over that pin. And then with any luck, we can just pull on that ever so gently. And that's how easy it is. Once we've got that out, I can now put it into slot number 9. Push it in, and you'll hear it click. That's it. Now we're locked in again. So again, this is a DT style pin. This one is used for the DTM style pins, which are the ones smaller than this for low current pins or signal wires. And finally, the big mama here, we've got the DTP. So this yellow one is for the very, very big Deutch pins that go in the DTP connectors. One of the last connectors we're going to talk about is this style of connector. This connector and its style is often found on our smart coils, or an air temperature sensor, or a coolant temperature sensor. That is often GM as a sort of broad range of naming. So this is very, very similar and same sort of family as this pressure sensor connector that is pull to seat. I have seen that somebody is making new push to seat versions of this with shells and all sorts of protection and fancy boots that are going to go on the back. So when that is available, this will be very, very easy to change and repin if you ever need to. Sometimes I get A and E back to front just because I'm tired and I'm just not thinking, or I'm right at the end of a job. And again, it is very, very, very difficult to pull this pin out and move it across to the wrong pin, because you can't do that, because you need to chop that pin off, relocate that wire, then put the new pin on. So if you haven't got spare pins to do that, again, moving those two wires over by cutting and crimping them back on again is the only way to do that. So by now you've probably realized there's a bit of a pattern that's going on. It'll either have a tab inside that you need to flick out and remove that pin. The pin itself will have a little prong on the side of it where it will want to be held in place, and you need to then flick those tabs in to be able to pull the pin out. It'll be virtually impossible to move that pin without cutting it and relocating it into a new place. So you might need to crimp on a new position for that pin and that wire. Or it uses a very specialized tool that you can get that then will remove that tool for that particular connector and that family of connector. So in summary, these 3 pin removal tools here will get you out of trouble with pretty much 90% of any sticky situation that you've got yourself into when you need to remove a pin from any one of these styles of connectors. These pin removal tools come in the kit with these crimpers that you buy. So have a look at them on the Haltech website. These will get you out of trouble pretty much all the time. If you happen to need these, you can buy these online. They are handy for doing those barrel style or circular connectors for bulkheads. And have a look online for any of these style pin removal tools. They do come in kits, or sometimes they're not made as pin removal tools. Sometimes they're made for other things, but they are super handy and super useful just to keep in your toolbox or in your kit in your car. So if you ever need to replace something that you've done wrong, it's very, very easy. Or you can help out a mate, which is awesome. If you've got a weird connector that we've never seen before, I'd love to see a picture of it. So put a link to it in the comments below. We'll see you next time.